Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. In this video, I wanted to showcase some new buildings that I've been working on, and these have been underway for several months now. I've been working on them hither and thither. But if you've been following the TerranScapes website over the last, say year and a half, I used to have quite a few Hirst Arts buildings up for sale. Cast in plaster, assembled block by block, all of that. And two things have really discouraged me from continuing with those. One is that they've been very fragile in shipping, and I've lost several large pieces to the post office, chaos storm that all of our packages go through. Although saying that, I mean, many things have arrived perfectly fine. But there have been some that have been a little more fragile, a little heavier, that have been destroyed in shipping. And also, it's so labor intensive to build buildings block by block that it just really hasn't been very profitable for me at all. So because I have such a strong love for the Hirst Arts molds, I've decided to go back and try one more time to re-examine how I might move this kind of product forward in the future. That's going to be better for the customer, better for me, and so hopefully be a win-win. So what I've decided to do is to assemble the buildings and then cast them as a single piece. So this is going to produce a much more durable finished piece, and it is going to hopefully ease production on my end a little bit, as most of the labor is up front. Once I get the mold done, I can replicate it much more quickly. And allowing for that, it's given me a chance to take a look at each building that I go work on here forward, and I can put in extra details on them up front, knowing that that labor then will just, it doesn't add to the replication labor. So I can take my time and try to build slightly better buildings with filled seams, more adornment. That's the idea that I've been trying to work towards. So at this point, I've got 3 buildings that I'm putting up on the site. They're actually up on the site already when you see this. And I wanted to go over them, talk a little bit about them, and a little bit about maybe what you can expect from the future. So here you can see the 3-inch, what I'm calling the shrine on the website. Here you can see it's unpainted, sort of raw cast. This is what I call unfinished on the website. So you get just the plain, plastic cast. And then here you can see what the finished version looks like. I opted for a metallic roof. I was thinking something bronze, but in the end, it's sort of, I just let it kind of go its own direction, put a little model mates on there to weather it, and I really like the way that came out. I like its coloring, and I like its metallic sheen without being too blingy. And, again, as I mentioned, being able to finish these pieces, knowing that I'm going to be casting them, I could clean up all the seams, really fill it in between all the blocks. I have to fill every single gap before I mold it. And then I gave it a little bit of a foundation to, sort of stand it. One of the things I've never liked about the Hirst Arts towers is they always feel like they're lacking a foundation, so I added one into this building. And then added in some of the Gothic, shrouded figures around it to kind of give it a shrine feel. And this is probably the smallest building I'll build. It's a 3-inch diameter, about 8 inches high, and it gives you a sense of at least one of the simplest pieces to cast. And next up, we have the 4-inch fieldstone tower. Now, the fieldstone tower is actually a piece. This is one of the first molds that made me fall in love with Hirst Arts. I just love the arrow slits. I love the teeth along the roof line. And having done this building several times in the past, I had a little sense of, I wanted to preserve it pretty much as I really like the kit as it is. Give you a sense of what the roof looks like. But what I wanted to do is, add a door to it. So this is a new door that I've constructed. And you can see sort of the detail on that. And then what I also did, again, to give it some grounding on the bottom, is I've added in a foundation to it using, I think this is from the 6-inch tower mold, 6-inch fieldstone tower. But anyway, dressed up that bottom, dressed up the opening just a little bit. And again, I can take the extra time to try to create the best piece that I can once, and then be able to, cast it up and preserve all of that detail. One thing I also tried to do with this building, and I think it comes through, it's a little subtle. I might go a little stronger on the next time, but you know me, I always err on subtle first few times. So I did go in and pick out some individual bricks using washes this time. And I like the way it subtly breaks up the color of the surface. And I'd like to get some of the secret weapon washes as they come in, I think, a few more colors, and go back through on future buildings and add just a little bit more contrast to some of those picked out blocks. Still playing with that. You can see it, I think, a little bit more prominently on the roof. Gave it a little wash with some weathering powders, hit it with some model mates along the bottom to weather that. Some streaking subtle from the roof. I didn't want to make it look too garish, and I really, really like this building, and I like the way it came out. So this was the second building. Here you can see it in its sort of unpainted state. Get a sense of what that looks like. And these are going to be on the site, both in their unfinished and finished versions. And here's the third of the new buildings in the new series. This is my Mausoleum. And I really want, after having done the previous two buildings, I felt more confident about casting a large structure. And this is a mold series that I've been wanting to take advantage of for several years and never really had the time, as it's so time consuming to assemble and figure out how to put all of these things together, these elements. But these are all from the Gothic mold line, and I really wanted something that felt Gothic. It's almost like dungeon turned inside out. But I wanted a nice mausoleum with the slate roof, something that had just a tremendous amount of detail on it. And I will say, building this master, sealing it, getting it ready for the mold was crazy time consuming. But I think in the end, it really paid off. This was also the most complicated mold I've ever done in terms of, worrying about capturing so many small details and undercuts, and it just came out pretty much almost perfect. And so I'm really excited, and I'm using this as a jumping off point for inspiration for all my future building work, as I now feel a lot more confident that I can really produce about as much detail and depth to the piece as I want, and still make it manageable for reproduction. Here you can see the unpainted version, and you can just see, again, doing the plastic as the first layer. It allows you in some spots, let's see if you can see it. Here you can see some of the foam trying to poke through where the plastic was a little thin, but the plastic just gives such a crisp detail preservation that I don't have to risk, air bubbles in all of these little spots. Trapments in these little details in the sort of stonework or windows, depending on how you wanted to paint it up. I decided to go through this and paint it as, as a solid stone structure, thinking mausoleum, but you could easily adapt the painting job to make it sort of like a church, and then paint in stained glass windows in some of those, make it like a chapel. It's got some flexibility in that regard. But I wanted something that had some, structural elements to it that make it a little bit more interesting, get away from the standard rectangle, and while like I said, a real bear to build and a real bear to get ready for casting. Probably the best Hirst Arts produced piece I've done to date, and really inspiring going forward from here. So that gives you some idea about the work that I've done on these buildings so far. It's been, like I said, months really of chipping away at it here and there to get to this point. But I'm really pleased that this building has, sort of proven to myself that I can cast more complicated structures and do it as a single piece. I've had people suggest to me, well, you could do, like these little buttress, sort of outcroppings as their own piece, right? And then keep the mold more simple, then attach them. But what I've found is that if there's any distortion in the alignment of the wall between the pieces, getting that to have a perfect seam between them can be a lot of work. Changing roofs and making them modular and casting them as pieces. In the end, I just decided I'd rather make one perfect building, at least as perfect as I can get it, and cast it as its own dedicated piece rather than trying to make it modular and hope all those things fit together as the mold deteriorates and the rubber could warp, and there's lots of things that can happen down the road. So that's the way I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try to produce at least 3 more buildings over time like this. Probably take me all year to get those done. The next one that's on the block, so to speak, for assembly will be using the octagon mold, the octagon tower mold, but I'd like to obviously take that into some new directions, add some pieces to it to really dress it up beyond some of the plans that Bruce Hirst provides on his site. So that will take some time, but it is on the slot to get worked on but by the end of the year, at least started. So you can keep your eye out for that as well. And I just want to say I'm also relieved to be kind of pushing in this direction because I feel a little more confident about their use on the sort of customer end of the relationship. Because plaster can chip, even though I'm using Tough Stone, which is a super hard gypsum cement plaster. It's really, really durable, but you know, when you have fine corners like this, or what I've also noticed is sometimes, you know, when you're setting a building down like that, you know, it can create a little abrasion at the bottom, and it can really show and detract from something that can otherwise be, you know, a really beautiful piece. So hopefully going into this plastic route is going to help alleviate that. Now, many of you who watch my channel, you know, might be curious to know exactly how do I go about casting these. I'm not going to do a casting tutorial, but for some of the viewers who are working with some of these Hirst Arts buildings or been doing some mold making of their own, I'm using a slightly more difficult, well, I shouldn't say that, but slightly more higher level of casting for these called a cavity void fill. And what I'd like to do is shoot another video after this within the next day or two and show you a brief overview of how I go about casting these buildings. It's not going to be a step-by-step. I'm not going to work you through all of it, but just to give you a sense of it, as it might be something that you want to explore if you're trying to produce more detailed buildings and would like to be able to replicate them. So keep your eye on the channel for that. Updates on the castle coming very soon. Done a bunch more work on that, and I've finished up the Imperial sector, and so some photos and videos of that will be coming along as well. So thanks for joining me once again, and I look forward to chatting some more terrain with you in the near future.